Hello YouTube friends, this is Dr. Teresa again, and today's question is from Nat Nguyen, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name yet. He wanted to know how I can keep my tank looking so clean and free from hair algae with all of those heavy brine shrimp feedings in the Dwarf Seahorse tank. Well, there are a couple of different strategies that I use, and all of them work towards keeping nitrates as low as possible. One thing I do is I vary the shrimp density. So yes, most of the time I provide dense brine shrimp feedings to the dwarf seahorses so they get sufficient nutrition, but there are times I let the density get very low. I know they're well fed and it doesn't harm them, but it also gives the tank a little bit of a break from the buildup of detritus and waste. Also, I just try to keep everything in the tank as clean as possible, and that's why I don't have any substrate. I vacuum the tank every evening, which also in turn works as a mini water change to remove the waste. But without the substrate at the bottom of the tank, I can see the waste very easily. Any uneaten brine shrimp that is laying on the bottom, any seahorse waste gets picked up because it's visible. It is not left to just sit there, and that really helps keep the nitrates lower. Once a week, I scrub down the sides and the front of the tank and do a larger water change, which also works to keep the nitrates down. And another thing that most people might not think of, the decor. I don't use macroalgae or live plants or corals or anything like that. I just use artificial plastic or silicone plants. They add color, they encourage color in the dwarf seahorses, but they're very easy to clean. So I either just swap out the decor. You'll notice in different videos I have different decor because I'm taking something out to clean it and replacing it with something else, or I might have a similar version of the item and just swap out the item completely. Sometimes when I'm doing a water change, if it's superficial, just a little bit of algae, I will just scrub it off right then and there and then vacuum it up when I vacuum the rest of the tank. So I don't let algae build very much on the decor. When a noticeable amount appears, I somehow address it, which is hard to do when you have macroalgae and your nitrates are super high. You will get algae building on top of your macroalgae, and that is hard to clean off. Another little strategy that most people wouldn't think of is I do keep a small amount of copepods in the tank. They are not a large amount, but they're enough to make a difference in my opinion. They work as a mini cleanup crew. Now, I do allow algae to grow on the back wall of the aquarium, and that does a couple of things. It does create a little home for the copepods if they wanted to crawl around in there. Some of them reproduce in there. I know that they're in there because the dwarf seahorses often will hang on the back wall and hunt for copepods to eat. But also having that algae on the back wall gives algae a place to grow and is preventing it from growing in other places that I don't want it to grow because it has its own little established area. Now, occasionally, depending on the time of year and how heavy the feedings have been, or depending on the density of my seahorse population, it will get harder to control the amount of algae. And in those cases, sometimes I will use a little extra help from products. And two products that I like are Seachem Purigen and Seachem Phosguard. They're pretty easy to use. I just put the recommended amount for my tank size in a little sachet, and then I place the sachets on the top layer of my aquarium filter, so I'm not dismantling the filter. I'm just putting it someplace where some water will flow through, and then I put a little phosphate pad on top just to help push down the sachets and make sure that water really is flowing through them. So basically that's what I do, and my tank does look pretty clear, I have to say, and I appreciate that Net noticed that. Thank you very much for the question, Net. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and take care.